Hi, I'm amazed if you're still with me. This is part 7 of a series that I'm calling The Journey. The purpose of life, I believe, is to learn to love God, God's creation, other people, and ourselves. And I believe that as we enter in to that process, that we become fully human and fully alive. I find it hardest, I think, to love myself. In order to love ourselves, we have to know ourselves. In order to love God, we have to get to know God personally. In order to love others, we need to get to know them, hear their stories. In order to love creation, we need to get to know nature. In order to love ourselves, we need to get to know ourselves and from whence we came. So I've told you about my father and mother. Growing up in Baltimore and also on Cape Cod, a little town called Woods Hole, Cape Cod in Massachusetts. I stopped going to Cape Cod in I can't remember exactly when. High school, probably junior high school age. Instead, took a summer job. Always had summer jobs. When I was in Woods Hole, I had summer jobs. I had one. My first summer job was squeegeeing off tennis courts. My second summer job was working in a parking lot where people parked their cars to get on the ferry to ride over to Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket. I later took a summer job working in Annapolis. My dad, as you know, was a biological oceanographer at Johns Hopkins, which the teaching part of that and the research part of that was centered on the Homewood campus, which is in Baltimore. But they had a field office. All of this has been sold off and gone by now. But anyway, they had a field office in Annapolis, which consisted of a Quonset hut, kind of a big shop, and a series of boats ranging from small, 30-foot boats up to a fairly decent sized research vessel capable of capable of doing work anywhere. I worked on I worked on the largest boat and on the second largest boat. The second largest one was around 90 feet long, and it was designed to do research up and down all the tributaries of the Chesapeake Bay. So we spent many weeks and months plying the Chesapeake Bay, plying the various tributaries. There's a whole plethora of rivers, and of course, that come off of or feed into the Chesapeake Bay. Could spend a lifetime just exploring the coast there. And then later on, I was transferred over to the larger boat, and on that one, we worked further out doing research off the continental shelf, which is about 70 miles out in the ocean. So the mouth of the bay, and then 100 miles or so out into the ocean. And those were good experiences. I was around pretty crude but very hardworking mariners. Some of them were former professional fishermen. A number of them had been in the Coast Guard when they were younger. They all had grown up on the water, and they accepted me with open arms and taught me how to play cribbage and sing sea songs, and um, we for the most part really had fun together. So I stopped going to Woods Hole and started doing that. Meanwhile, here I am about a junior in high school, and I had that teacher that I mentioned in video a long time ago here in this series, um, who challenged me to consider what is the meaning of life. And that's what led me into, I think I had always been at some level struggling with that. I always had a very sensitive spirit, always sensed that there was a God who was, or a divine force that wasn't far away. Never able to connect quite, almost, but not quite. And through the prodding of this particular teacher, and I had some remarkable classmates, brilliant young men. We went to a public school, but at that time in Baltimore, it was an all-boys public school, 4,000 boys. And the class that I was in was predetermined for for college and professional careers and such. And so I really had some remarkable classmates, really smart people. And we did a lot of discussing. I remember this is the time of the civil rights movement is in full blast. Jim Crow laws are starting to crumble. Redlining has been outlawed. People in the neighborhoods are afraid that, those black people might move in. Lo and behold, they did. And they turned out to be wonderful neighbors. Those old systems are crumbling. The Vietnam War is raging. This is a time when I was profoundly affected by the poetry of the age. The poetry written by Paul Simon and sung by Simon and Garfunkel. The poetry written by Bob Dylan and sung by Bob Dylan and by everybody else who could play a guitar and sing. This is the time of Joan Baez. This is the time of Peter, Paul, and Mary. This was a time of deep seeking after truth and a very deep awareness that the Vietnam War was an illegal war, and that those of my generation who were dying there were wasting their lives, that it was not a war for freedom, for anybody's freedom. It was not a war that in any way was fighting for your country or any of that stuff. The troops were there because of politicians who lied and who had their own self-interests in mind. And I don't share that in any way to take away from the dedication and sacrifice of the troops themselves. I'm criticizing at a much higher level than that. So very aware of that. The draft was hanging over my head as well as all of us. So that, and the civil rights. So it was a time when all these things came together and made us really, or at least made me really rethink, what is life all about? What is the meaning of life? Is there any such thing as a just war? Can I participate in war? Should I participate in war? Is there a God? If there is a God, how does God fit in with all this? What is God's opinion of what's going on. So it was a time of intense searching for me. And during that time, as had been common when I was a younger child, I was having panic attacks periodically. I can't tell you how close together they were, but and again, I didn't know what they were, but I did kind of instinctively learn to talk myself down to them, from them, by taking deep breaths, and I would repeat to myself, relax, relax, with each deep breath, and that got me through them. Searching through philosophy, searching through religions of all sorts. Got a letter from my sister, who, as I said, is older than I am. She married when she was 18 years old and moved out of state. And at the time, I'm now, I think, a junior in high school. She lived in California and started to attend a church out there called Calvary Chapel, which was kind of the center of the Jesus movement in California. And she wrote me a long letter explaining her conversion to Christ, and ending it with something to the effect of, our parents raised us to consider things. So consider this. Consider that this could be true. Don't just dismiss it. Test it and see if it's true. Based on that, and probably not long after one of those panic attacks, I was in my room, desperately wanting to know if God existed. And I don't remember what I said, but I cried out to who or what I didn't know. I cried out to the universe, something to the effect of, God, if you're there, tell me, show me. And the room lit up. It was this bright, glowing light. It was almost as if you could have opened a drawer and light would have come out. I mean, I didn't, but it was definitely a supernatural light. And I felt overwhelmed by a spirit that was not mine. I know it now to be the Holy Spirit. And then a voice began to speak through me. I mean, it was my voice, but it didn't even sound like my voice. It had a slightly higher pitch. And the words, I knew, did not come, at least from my conscious brain. And I'm well aware that you can doubt all of this and come up with scientific explanations for all of it. But at any rate, looking back, I am convinced that it was a gift of prophecy and that God was speaking through me. And God told me, He called me little one. And He communicated to me that He loved me and that He would never leave me. And I felt, I think for the first time in my life, a complete peace wash over me. And I knew that it was the beginning of a new life. No one was with me. I didn't join any church. I didn't pray any sinner's prayer. I didn't have any tracts or books to go by. All I had was this beautiful experience. I had recently read a little book by a missionary named Frank Laubach, and in it he talks about a similar experience when he was confronted with the living God. I felt a deep, deep sense of peace. I knew that God existed. Kind of had always known that at some level, but I knew that I knew. And I knew that I was beginning on a journey that would take me into truth, but also through a series of trials and tribulations, the likes of which I could never have possibly imagined. I'll tell you about those next time.